Hi, and welcome back to Ninox Learning. My name is Andy Marks. I'm a Ninox programmer and trainer. And in this class, we're going to talk about one of the most important aspects of building a custom database application, data modeling. Now, previously, we've looked at the Ninox desktop, and in the classes that follow, we're going to begin actually building a custom database application. But before we start that building process, I want to talk about data modeling. Building a strong and well-conceived data model is to a database what a strong foundation is to a house or a building. Designed and installed correctly, that building can stand for hundreds of years, and it can grow and serve our needs as our needs grow. If the foundation is not strong, however, if our data model is not strong, there's a good chance the database is not going to do exactly what we want it to do, and we may in fact find ourselves having to start over because we're creating a piece of technology on a foundation that can't support what we want that technology to do. Data modeling is one of the first steps in building a good, effective, efficient database. It's one of the most important steps, and it's what I want to talk about for these next few minutes. Now let's take a look at our database and see what data modeling is and how it's done in Ninox. I'm going to go ahead and create a blank table using my new table tool. And this window is what we call the table management toolset, or the table management window in Ninox. This is where we build our data model. This window consists of three primary sections. On the left, we see the table characteristics, or the table definition, its name, whether or not it's hidden or visible, is it searchable, are there any triggers, pieces of code that execute immediately and every time a new record is created or existing content is modified. In the center, we see the actual objects, a list of all of the individual pieces and parts that collectively make up the structure or the architecture of a table. And on the right, in section 3, we see a library. In fact, we're going to see 3 libraries of all of the different pieces and parts, the objects that we can use to construct our database. Now, the process of data modeling in Ninox is very easy, and it's consistent no matter what kind of object we want to put into our database. Let's say we want to add a date and a time field. With our mouse hovering over the object, we click and hold, we drag and drop. Want to add a text field where we track a name, maybe a time field to go with the date where we can track the date and time of appointments, and maybe we want to have a multi-line text field where we put comments, details of the meeting that we just had. Click, hold, drag, and drop. It's that simple. Now, here in the Create Field section, we see all of the different types of fields, along with the option to add formulas, into our database. Future training classes, additional classes available later on in the Ninox Learning Series, talk about each and every one of these types of fields. We're not going to talk about it here, but what I do want you to understand is there are 2 primary kinds of content in any database. They are fields and formulas. Fields, whether they are text fields or number fields, dates, times, signatures, locations, phones, or emails. Data fields are buckets that we can fill with content or information, or Ninox can fill with information, and it's usually a combination of the 2. Formulas, however, are buckets that have content that Ninox creates. We can't put information directly into a formula field. We can affect the formula, but Ninox executes the formula, and the result of the formula is what we see in that field. Now, as I said, there's 3 different libraries containing different kinds of objects that go into our database. Here we have the formula object and all of the different options for field objects. If you direct your attention towards the bottom right-hand corner of our screen, just above the Cancel and Save Changes buttons, you see the other two libraries. The next one I want to look at is the Layout Element library. This library contains two types of objects. The first ones, tab, header, free text, line break, space, and button, are items that we place, objects that we insert into our database that not only affect the operation in the case of buttons, but primarily are used to affect the user interface, the look and feel of the forms that we use to view entire records at a time in Ninox. When we talk about form view, we talk about an entire screen being used to view all of the fields in a single record. These layout elements allow us to insert spaces and headings and text labels that make the content being presented more understandable and, as a result, more valuable. The other two elements, the view and the chart layout element, are effectively windows into other tables. A view or a chart object placed in a database is effectively our way of telling Ninox that while we're looking at a record in this table, I want to have a window into records in another table that there is some basis of relationship. If I'm looking at a table that lists all my salespeople, I may want to have a view, and I'm going to click, hold, and drag. I may want to have a view of all of the sales that salesperson has made. This table might be my salesperson's table, but this object, this view object or layout element, is a window through which I can see additional information related to this record. Specifically, if I'm looking at a salesperson, I can view all of the sales made by that individual member of my team. The next and final section I want to look at are the table references. When we talk about a relational database, the key word is relate or relationship. It is the ability for Ninox or any relational database to connect pieces of content, to tie them together in a manner that allows us to draw conclusions, and follow a path of thinking, a technological stream of consciousness, if you will. It is the ability to build these relationships through links, through joins, through a variety of techniques that we discuss in upcoming classes. These relationships are the ultimate power of relational databases as a whole, and of course, the Ninox system, which we consider to be one of the most powerful relational tools available. Now, when you create a database, in the Create Table Reference library, you will see as options all of the other tables in the database. For example, I'm going to create this table, and I'm going to call it Customer Master Table. I'm only typing in all caps because I want this to stick out in a moment. Normally, I would not use all caps to name a table, but I'm going to do it in this instance. I'm going to save this and now create yet another table. When I go to look at Create Table Reference, there's my Customer Master Table. Again, these table references are all of the other tables that exist within the construct that is a Ninox database application. And as we build one table, here in this case we're building table number 1, we have the option to link or build relationships from this table to any and all other tables in the database that have some logical relationship to the content of this table, in this case, table number 1. The way we construct or architect our table is the same. Click, drag, and drop. So very quickly, if I want to build a table, again, let's look at a table of salespeople, and I want to see all of their sales And I want that, and I also want to see a link to the inventory so I can see the details of the products they've sold. I'll need a couple of fields. A couple of text fields, maybe for their first name and their last name. Maybe I need to know the date they were hired, the beginning and ending time of their sales shift. Now remember, from this table, I want to view a window into some other tables. So I'm going to go into my layout elements and grab that view. This will allow me to see in textual format, letters and numbers, information about the sales these individual salespeople have completed. If I wanted to see that data, if I wanted a window into another table, but I wanted to see a picture of the data as opposed to the textual format, the letters and numbers, I could just as easily drag in a chart. And finally, I want to create a relationship between this table and my new car inventory table so I can not only see the deals that each salesperson closed, but I can look into inventory and see the specific configuration of each car that was sold in each deal that is attributable to this salesperson. Now, I'm going to save these changes and go look at one more thing. Data modeling is the act of modeling the database to replicate the flow of information or content in our business or our club or church or our family. That's what data modeling is. A data model is a picture of what we just constructed. With our wrench turned on, which means we're in administrative mode, you will see the data model option in the top left-hand section or button pod of your Ninox desktop. When we click on data model, we see the picture. We see the graphic representation of the tables and the relationships between tables that we just created. Now, here's the customer master table that I built just a moment ago. Here's table number 1. Remember that second table that I created. This is the table that not only had the views, it was the salesperson table that had views into the cars each salesperson sold, but it had that link back to my new car inventory. That link is represented by this line here. The line begins at the table that is asking the question, what kind of car did this salesperson sell? And the line concludes and the arrowhead points to the table that delivers the answer. He or she sold this specific truck or car or SUV. Now, we see lots of tables in this database. Some have children, some don't, some are linked to other tables, some aren't, and we're going to get into all of that as we progress through this series of Ninox learning classes. But what I want you to understand right now, and the important thing to take away from this particular class, is we begin constructing our database the same way we begin constructing a building, on the ground floor, pouring that foundation. And when we're pouring the foundation of a database application, we are modeling our data. We are defining the tables and the objects within those tables, the fields and formulas, the user interface components, and the links to other tables that are going to allow information and business intelligence and raw data to flow through our database, to flow through that model, the same way they flow through the business or the club or the family that is actually going to use this database application for processing, for reporting, for information storage. So that's data modeling. It's not complicated. In fact, it's rather easy. And there is a very creative component to it. There really isn't a right or wrong way to model your database. But there are best practices, and we're going to talk about those going forward. But the important thing to remember is that table management tool, this window, which shows us the properties of our table, its name, all of the components that make up the table, we see those in this center section, and the fields, the formulas, the layout elements, and don't forget those windows to the other tables, the view and chart. And finally, the links, the relationships from this table to the other tables that are so powerful and critical. In every single video from this point forward, you'll hear me talk about data modeling. You'll hear me use the words Ninox Table Management Window. This is that window. This is where we build data models. This is where we begin creating the amazing technology that Ninox allows us to create. That's it for now. Head over to the next class where we start talking about each individual field and how we use those fields when we are constructing or modeling our databases and our tables. And I'll see you in that classroom. Thanks.